We'll call the meeting to order. We don't have a gavel, but we're calling it to order, and starting with the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the meeting. Obviously, moving to Hermiston causes a larger crowd, so we appreciate that. Do know that we are keeping a written record and a visual record of the proceedings of this meeting. Do we have any awards, recognition, or correspondence?
No. Mr. Chair, I have none.
Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting, July 24th, 2019, and July 26th, 2019.
Chairman, I move approval of the July 24, 2019 and the July 26, 2019 minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have additions to the agenda?
Other than, did you want to talk about the resolution regarding the railroad?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so that would be an addition.
Okay. One addition to the agenda, this is a matter of concerns with the Union Pacific Railroad extended blocking of tracks in Stanfield, so that will be added to the agenda. Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the commissioners on a matter other than those that are on the agenda? Okay, we'll move into the agenda. Item number 1 is consideration of the charter review recommendations. Do you want to start, Council?
Okay. At the last board meeting, the Charter Review Committee presented its report and recommendation based on their last 20 meetings that they held to discuss proposed changes to the charter. There are a number of Charter Review Committee that are present today. What is before the board is to take some type of action on their recommendation. Under the terms of the charter, the board, once they receive the report, has 60 days to take some type of action. The other time frame that's involved is that if you want anything to get on the November ballot, it has to be completed and referred to the voters by August 16th. So this is probably the only board meeting that you would have available to make any recommended changes that you want to be referred to the voters for consideration in the November election. You can always, of course, do it at a later election, but if you want to meet the November deadline, it probably will have to be done today if you want to refer anything to the voters. There were 3 recommended changes to the charter that were made by the review committee, and you each have had received a copy of the report, and I think probably well versed in what the recommendations are.
And there are 3 resolutions before the board.
There are 3 potential. Each one of the recommended changes would come with a separate ballot measure, so there are 3 proposed ordinances to refer each one of those to the voters.
Do you want to discuss them as a group or individually?
I would rather individually.
Likewise.
Okay. The first resolution, Council, can you read that?
The first proposed one would be ordinance number 2019-05. This is referring to what's been referred to ballot measure number 1 is regarding county management. This would be the provision that would put into the charter the requirement that the Board of Commissioners appoint a county manager. Along with that is also a change to require the appointment of a county council. The board already has taken action to appoint a county council, but it is not in the charter. The reason this would be in the charter along with the county manager to make it sure that the Board of Commissioners would be appointing a county council, and that the county manager would not appoint the county council. There would be more direct appointment by the board, and so that the county manager would not be over the county council.
Okay.
In that the county council would report directly to the board.
Yes. And that's why the committee recommended that change.
Before we open it up to the floor, do either of you wish to make a comment?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. A comment on this one. But first, I'd like to express my gratitude to the members of the Charter Review Committee, 8 citizens Of Umatilla County, all volunteers served on the committee and gave a great deal of time and consideration to the county charter and possible ways that it can be made even stronger to serve all citizens in our county. They spent over 30 hours in 19 meetings over a 15-month span, studying the charter, listening to testimony, discussing changes. They could have been home having dinner with their families, discussing the affairs of the day, watching the evening news. But they gave generously of their time and skills to provide meaningful input to this board. For that, I'm very grateful. I've read the minutes of each meeting that was held, noted the testimony, reviewed the discussions. There's much to like about the recommendations of the committee. Much thought has gone into it. Let me address ballot measure one first. Ballot measure 1 requires the appointment of a county manager and a legal counsel, and I want to underscore requires. Most of you know we currently have a legal counsel. Our legal counsel is an invaluable asset to Umatilla County, and I might add, works very, very hard. Has a great deal of work to do owing to the size of our county. I would not want to see the Board of Commissioners without those services. Umatilla County does not have a county manager. The time has come that Umatilla County needs an officer to manage the administrative functions of our county. The current Board of Commissioners has been blessed to have Commissioner Murdoch, who has deep experience in public administration, available to our board. Our tasks and our accomplishments would have been much more difficult without him. The Board of Commissioners, I'll add, is already empowered to hire employees needed by Umatilla County. County manager can currently be hired in much the same way as the county legal counsel can be hired, or the county's CFO, Chief Financial Officer, is hired without necessity of change in charter. That the ballot measure is being presented as a requirement of the board is a concern to me. This board has made a practice of deliberate and thoughtful decision-making, decisions the citizens of the county can understand and with which they can agree, or at least they can understand. The matter of a county manager, if put to the voters without being fully developed in a careful, thoughtful, deliberate, and fully disclosed manner as to function, cost, and benefit, runs a high risk of failure at the ballot box. Should it fail at the ballot box, it would likely not see the light of day at any time in the near future. Would the commissioners appoint one anyway after the voters had spoken? I doubt it. Failure to hire a county administrative manager, in my opinion, is not in the best interests of Umatilla County. That's failure to hire. We continue to grow in numbers, our economy becomes more complex, the burdens of the board grow heavier. It would particularly be disappointing to lose that opportunity to hire a county manager. I've worked in a large company at the mid-level. I've managed my own small business. Public administration is different than small business. My background did not prepare me for public administration. 6 years after being elected, the learning curve is still steep. Public administration skill sets necessary for the complexities of Umatilla County may just not be available to future boards. It might be my position in this matter that this issue should not be placed before the voters at this time. I don't feel it's properly prepared nor ready to be presented. While the concept truly has value, the position of a county manager needs to be fully developed as to function, cost, and benefit, and fully vetted to the public. As a Board of Commissioners, we need to direct ourselves to develop the concept, work out the wrinkles if possible, eliminate unintended consequences wherever possible, listen to the people, and avoid the adage, be careful what you ask for, you may get it. I would ask that those who favor the idea and those who do not, to trust your commissioners to get it right on this one before it becomes a reality. By the time that it is ready, I would expect that it would not to be a long time, perhaps a few months, Our citizens will know the merit and wisdom of such a move and would support the board's decision to move ahead or not. If felt necessary, it would be referred to a subsequent election for a referendum, if that's really what is felt necessary. Taxpayers are the bill payers. They'll want to know why it makes sense, how a manager would be paid, what a manager would do, and what a manager would not do. So I'm not supportive of moving this to the ballot at this time. I feel that it runs an unnecessary risk of being doomed by an unnecessary sense of urgency created to get it to the ballot, mandating the position before it's prepared and truly ready. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer?
I wrote down just a few things. One of the things that I started with was I broke it down, the counties, with how they had a manager or administrator and how they didn't. 3 counties, the chair of the board is the administrator, and those include Baker, Willow, and Multnomah counties. 7 counties have a judge system in place where the judge is the administrator: Cook, Gilliam, Grant, Harney, Malheur, Sherman, and Wheeler. And in terms of population, I believe these are the 7 smallest counties in the state. And 9 counties do not have an administrator of any kind: Josephine, Umatilla, Columbia, Coos, Curry, Klamath, Lincoln, Tillamook, and Douglas. And Douglas County has over 110,000 in population. The Charter Review Committee, first, before I go any further, I do want to echo what Commissioner Elfring said. I really appreciated the time that the committee put into this. I know they worked really hard and on what they came up with. While I may not agree with everything that they did, I certainly respect the process, and you know, they gave a lot of their time and hard work, and it clearly shows how hard they worked. That being said, the committee interviewed several county employees, and the committee referenced these interviews in their presentation to the board. I would like to point out that these interviews were conducted prior to my taking office. The committee recommended a salary of approximately $125,000 to $150,000 a year plus benefits. I'd just like to point out that Clatsop County just hired an administrator at the beginning of this month at a salary of $160,000 a year plus benefits, and Clatsop County is about half the size of Umatilla County. One concern that I have heard is that a manager would add another layer of bureaucracy between the elected officials and the public. And I believe that's a valid concern, as I also have heard from employees who were here when we had a quasi-manager, myself included, and this is exactly what happened at that time. There was a barrier, and we were not allowed to see the commissioners. I've heard from many people that the county is running better now than ever before. This includes people who were interviewed by the committee previously. The commissioners have and always have had the ability to simply appoint a manager without tying it to the charter, yet have always chosen not to do so. This leads me to my statement that was quoted by Michelle Grable when she presented to the board: "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." And I stand by that statement. And so I am not inclined to put this item on the ballot. In the future, the commissioners can appoint a county manager if the need so arises. Are you wanting us to talk about all the ballot measures, or just...
No, just that one.
Okay, and so that's my statement.
My position on the matter has not been a great secret. I was involved with council when we responded to the obligations of the charter, and that was to appoint a volunteer committee of citizens who have now spent 18 months studying this matter. As I've indicated publicly since day one, it's my intent to honor the work of that committee. I also believe strongly that a matter of this magnitude relative to how Umatilla County is governed should be commended to the voters for their input rather than having it decided by the commissioners. So while we are normally fairly compatible on decisions, I don't think we are on this one, because it certainly is my intent to vote to take any matter recommended by the Charter Review Committee to the voters in November. So we have public comment in response to this. We can do that, can't we? Mm-hmm. Sure. Anybody wish to speak on the matter? Okay.
Yes, I will. I'll stand if anybody else would.
Do you want to stand and identify yourself, Sonny? Thank you.
Sure, Sunny Danforth. I appreciate all the work that the committee did as well. And I know, and I went to 3 of those such meetings and listen to the testimony that was received. I would like to, because our county has the ability to hire a manager at any time when they see the growth of our county might deem that. I like that option rather than the requirement to do so, and also the requirement of county council. We always need county council, and I believe that that's going to be something that's always there. I agree with, if it's not broke, don't fix it, and be careful what you ask for. And also the level of it would add more bureaucracy to our county, where you three are the managers of all the departments, as I understand it. Now, I'm not a county commissioner, there's lots I don't know about this. But by being that, you also have department heads. And each department head should be capable of running their department. And personally, I don't see that the commissioners would need to run a department's day-to-day business. That you should be able to look ahead to the future of what our county needs in that county development and the vision and where our county is going. So I believe that with your position as it is now, and good department heads running things, that you ought to be able to fulfill that section of the obligation that you have to the citizens of Umatilla County. And I don't believe that we need another level of bureaucracy and cost, because a manager is going to have assistants, going to have other, a secretary and assistants, and I am hearing what Clatsop County at $150,000 with half the population of us, you're going to also get what you pay for if you only want to pay $110,000 for that. So I'm not in favor of the mandatory requirement. Thank you.
Other comments? Michelle?
I would just like to say two things. One thing I did not say yesterday or last meeting with respect to the requirement of county council. The county hasn't always had a county council. In fact, I think I was the first county council. And back in 1980, when I was on maternity leave, the commissioners eliminated my position. So then they hired a county council, then they eliminated me. And then Bud Draper decided that, well, maybe the county did need a county council, so then I was hired back again in June of 1980. Secondly, it was not our intent to create another layer of bureaucracy with the appointment of the county manager. In fact, just the opposite. We want to free the commissioners to chase the money in Salem and Washington, D.C. We want to free you to get grants and to advocate for our county and let the administrative responsibilities of managing the day-to-day business of the county be left to county manager, whom you will direct and oversee, hire and fire. He or she will be under your control. So it is, if the commissioners in this last go-around created a barrier by hiring a county administrative assistant, well, it was, I guess, on them. They should have seen what was happening, and this person was not, I do not believe, was trained as and had the degrees necessary to be a professional assistant. She was more of an administrative assistant with possibly more power than she should have been. So as Chairman Murdoch said last meeting, you don't, if you have a school superintendent, you don't like him, you don't just eliminate the job, you get another school superintendent. And I'm hearing 2 of the 3 commissioners say, we need a county manager, but yet we don't have one. And why not? Why don't we? And we would ask that instead of allowing you three to make the decision. Let's let the public make the decision, and if the public does not want a county manager, then they can vote down our proposal, our ballot measure. Thank you.
Other comment from the commissioners?
I'll just say what, in response to Michelle, that's the reason why I feel it needs to be carefully put together as far as what the position is going to be, how it's going to function, how it's going to be funded, so that it doesn't run the risk of being turned down at the ballot box that I think it would if it's put together and put on the ballot without having that work done.
Well, I can tell it, I can speak again. Our review committee is committed enough to this proposal that we are going to, if you decide to put it on the ballot, I know several of us are going to campaign heavily, explain to the, public what we intended and possibly advocate in various areas of the county. We're going to do our best to see that the public is informed, and we have time, we believe. I think Sally. I think it.
Sally, would you identify yourself?
Yes,
Correct?
Sally Anderson, Hannah, Wilmington, Oregon. I think it's folly to assume that paying a professional county manager is money wasted. I think a professional county manager would save you more than he would ever cost by, just as Michelle pointed out, allowing you to chase the money, allowing you to focus more on policy, strategic planning, advocacy, chasing the money. And the point of the charter committee was, of course, to identify what the county needs now and how the charter can help you, and thus the recommendation that the charter contain the mandate that there be a county commissioner and a county council to help you.
Commissioner Elfman?
No, nothing further.
Before I call for a motion, I think it's going to be interesting. I do not think that whatever direction we take is mutually exclusive, because I think the record now demonstrates that should we choose not to take this issue to the ballot, it is a matter of public record that the commissioners would continue to consider the matter of a county manager. That is now in the record. Is that agreeable?
That's agreeable.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So the motion would be stated to...
In opposition to ordinance 2015-05, right?
That would be correct.
2019-05.
But I would so move that we not put the measure before, not approve the measure to the ballot.
So to confirm, you're opposing that ballot measure?
Yes.
Okay.
That it not be placed on the ballot, measure one not be placed on the ballot.
All right, voting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Nay. Okay.
Well, you only get one nay.
No, but I had to call for it. I had to call for it. All right. Next ordinance.
The next one is proposed ordinance number 2019-06. This is refer what is called ballot measure 2 to the voters. This is regarding the method of election of is elected positions for Umatilla County. The current one has the board of the commissioner being required to be elected at the November election. Under the current proposal, if there are 2 or less candidates, they would be only running in the general election in November. But if there are 3 or more, then it would be a primary, with the 2 highest going to the November election for final decision.
Now, if you've got that figured out, I'll put in with you. Sometimes you're going to elect them at a primary. It states clearly in our charter, in Article 3, Section 1, Paragraph 3, 1 commissioner shall be elected at each presidential election and 2 commissioners at each other general election. So it specifies very clearly we're going to elect at a general election. While that language could be tidied up a little bit to truly clarify what a presidential election is and when the presidential election is, it does clearly state that it will be in November. And that's been the choice of the voters. It's been the choice of the charter writers, and it's been in there for quite some time. Now, Oregon Candidate Manual, which explains ORS 249.088 and ORS 249.091, states that nonpartisan candidates receiving a majority of the votes may be elected at the primary election, but not an office that must be elected at the general election. So it takes away electing at a primary. So the people have spoken in the past, they want to elect their commissioners at a general election. The question becomes, who will be available to vote for in a general election? State election regulations provide an opportunity to shortcut the process by electing a candidate with a majority of votes in the primary election, who then in essence becomes the nominee and is then advanced to the November ballot. The committee proposal on ballot measure 2 certainly clarifies the process and makes it much clearer. It further gives voters the opportunity in every instance to choose from the top 2 candidates who have been presented for election in the primary. I'd be remiss to not point out the other side that, and I've wrestled with this one a lot because I've been on both sides of this issue, and I've wrestled with it a lot, and I'd be remiss not to point out some disadvantages to the way it is and the way it's currently proposed. The way it's currently proposed is that if there were 2 or less candidates presented in the May primary, that there would be no May primary, that it would become and go directly to the general election, as our current charter says we will elect in the general election. However, the disadvantage is when multiple candidates come forth and a primary election is mandated, the campaign season, as a candidate, the campaign season becomes a lot longer. In cases of partisan elections, it's not an option anyway. You have both sides elect their candidates and they all face off in the general election. The proposal by the committee in essence does pretty much the same thing. Presents 2 candidates who would run for in the general election. It is a disadvantage to candidates who then have to manage their campaigns a little bit differently. But it's not a disadvantage to the voters, who have then the opportunity to choose from the 2 best candidates. In the case of an incumbent running for re-election, it does create a distraction from day-to-day duties at the Board of Commissioners. They spend more time thinking about, if not actually doing activities that have to do with the election. But that's no more so than any candidate who runs from any job that they have and they're performing in the general public. In this instance, I believe the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, so I'm supportive of ballot measure 2.
I'm not going to go into as much detail as my colleague did. One of the things that the biggest difference between the way the Charter Review Committee laid it out and the state language is, and kind of like what Commissioner Elfring has mentioned, was in May, if 3 people go up for an election, and under the state language, 1 candidate receives 90% of the vote. The other 2 split the remaining 10. 1 receiving 7, 1 receiving 3%, for a total of 100%. So the way the Charter Review Committee has written it up, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Doug, but the way I read it is the top 2 would go to November. So the person that received 90% of the vote would be on the ballot alongside the person with 7% of the vote. State language, in that same scenario, it's done in May. The person that received 90% of the vote is the candidate. And I'm reading right here, it says, in some circumstances, nonpartisan candidates may be, and that's what we're talking about, may be elected at the primary election. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Nonpartisan candidates that may be elected at the primary include any candidate that receives a majority of the votes cast, and except for, and one of the things is an office that must be elected at the general election. for instance, the sheriff's office. The office of the sheriff, by statute, has to be elected in the general election. So that's my only hang-up I have with the way the Charter Review Committee has it, is if one person receives a super majority, I'm talking 90%, they're still on the ballot in November with a person that received 7%. In my opinion, I think the state language clarifies that much better, and I think, and again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I say go with the state language on that if we're going to change it at all. So I'm in opposition to that ballot measure.
Having just spent a year of my life trying to get the opportunity to return to this position, I might be much in favor of a shortened election. But the spring elections are small, and as I surfaced one day, without much fault or all, if it were left to me, position 1 would represent the east, position 2 would be at large, and position 3 would be in the west. That's because I believe strongly we should do everything possible to make sure that there's every opportunity for the voters to at least consider the idea of having representation from all parts of the county. And I think the proposal that we're taking to the ballot, ordinance number 2019-06, provides, by going to November, every possible chance for the voters to assure that, as a group, they can help provide some balance. So, is there comment from the audience? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that ballot measure 2 be advanced to the ballot.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay.
Opposed?
Oh, opposed? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Nay.
I guess I took that for granted, sorry. All right. The next issue.
May I ask when that language for that ballot measure will be issued then? Yeah, to get onto the ballot.
Yeah, it will be this week.
Be available, okay.
Yeah, it's right now, it's online, the proposed ballot measure. The third one is ordinance number 2019-07. This is primarily changing the wording in the charter that reflects the law enforcement department being changed to the sheriff's office. When this was originally created, the thought was that the sheriff would be managing more than one division or department, so that's the reason why the original committee came up with the law enforcement department language. The proposal is to change that to sheriff's office in all instances and make it clear that the sheriff does have all of the functions that are provided as set out in Oregon law.
Mr. Chairman, my reading of the measure, the only indicated change, whatever really, is the change from the title Department of Law Enforcement to the Sheriff's Office, as far as Umatilla County Office. And it brings consistency in our charter with other sheriff's offices in the state. I see no reason to not make this change.
Having spent over 18 years at the sheriff's office, I can speak to that. The language sheriff's office, it refers to the office of the sheriff, because the sheriff is an elected official, therefore the sheriff holds an office. It's not a department that is under, like, the police department. The city police department is under the city's jurisdiction. Well, the sheriff's office is under the voters. And the sheriff is the one who we elect to run that agency. So when I was at command college, we had a jar at the front of the room. Anybody who said sheriff's department put $1 in the jar, because it was a sheriff's office. And command college is for command staff from sheriff's offices across the state of Oregon. So you have to be a sergeant or higher to go to command college. And so anytime somebody said sheriff's department, they put money into the kitty, and we were able to buy pizza at the end of the week with that. And because the sheriff has, if you look at statute, I think it's 138 statutes talk about the office of the sheriff, what the requirements of the sheriff are. If you look for a chief of police, for instance, there's 0. So there's a big difference between a sheriff's department or a sheriff's office versus a police department. So I am highly in favor of this change. So to me, it's not just mere semantics in the wording, it's actually, there's a reason behind it.
Well, all of the references in here are to the sheriff's office, so we're removing a potential source of revenue, but other than that, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move advancing ballot measure 3 to the ballot.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's no nays. All right, we will take a 1-minute recess so that those who do not wish to participate in the rest of this scintillating agenda can slip out. Michelle?
Before you do, I do have a proposal. I'd like to follow up on Commissioner Elfering's statement before the consideration of the motion on ballot measure 1. Anyone who knows me knows I don't die easily.
Well, we hope not.
And this may be my last gasp, but why don't the commissioners put on the next agenda the idea of that Commissioner Elfring had of forming a committee of whomever you desire, whether it's department heads, cities, include a city manager or two, and form a committee to study the appointment of a county manager, how much it would cost, what the functions would be, and that would be the first part, and the second part would be, do we want to put that to the voters, or do we just want to hire one? So you said we need more study on the matter. Well, let's study it, because the committee feels very strongly we need a county manager, so possibly you should study that issue and decide for yourselves whether or not you come to the same conclusions as we did.
And we're allowing second time chair speaking. I would like to say, I kept hearing that this would allow, on ballot measure 1, this would allow our county commissioners to chase money. It would be cheaper to hire a grant writer to chase money than hiring a county manager. I didn't hear anything about actual management. I heard about freeing up your time to go chase funds. Thank you.
Any other comment? I think, I'm going to act too authoritatively, and I'm still stinging from your maternity leave, Michelle. Feeling like we need to make something up to you, but
just so you know, if you get pregnant, we're not going to terminate you.
You're safe, Doug.
He's won the lottery.
Well, I think based on the comments of all, actually, and I pointed out, it's a mutually exclusive decision isn't mutually exclusive on the first thing. I can promise you that we will put it on the agenda. I cannot guarantee it will be at the next meeting, but I think we'd like to take a little time to figure out what that might look like. But I can promise you that in a timely manner, we will put this on an agenda. So.
It will be taken up.
So, I'd say, if I said within 60 days, would that be?
How much of a poll are all of you at running out there now and going after money and all this? So, I mean, it sounds like you're going to bounce out there and find business everywhere. Are all of you going to do this? I mean, do you have the credentials to do this?
I think the function of the county commissioner will be certainly considered and taken into very careful consideration as to what that county manager would be, what it would look like, what it would cost, what the function would be. Just stay tuned.
I think the consideration in this matter, we're maybe narrowing it or refining it to us going out chasing money. I think the concept is far broader than that. In talking to other commissioners, if we went that direction, permitting commissioners to focus on much broader issues that they have not recently had time to focus on because they're concerned with the day-to-day operations of the county. I think that's a much broader concept that would probably we would discover as we get into this. But I think probably at our next meeting we'll decide what we want reconsideration to look like. Is that
Yes.
agreeable?
Yes.
So, okay, that's what we'll do.
I
But-
appreciate you guys not putting the cart before the horse.
But it's not, by no means would want to leave the impression the discussion is dead. It will be a serious, prolonged discussion of the whole issue. So, okay? Now we'll take a 1-minute break, so if anybody wants to sneak out.
Is 1 minute long enough?
Well, and I certainly thank the committee,
Made it work.
as we've done several times.
Much better to not have the cart.
Bye-bye. See you later.
Identify yourself or
Bye.
point it out somewhere so I have it, because I don't appreciate it.
I don't think I excused Commissioner Elfring.
Well, he sure took the opportunity to take off, didn't he?
I guess I should have known that.
She's probably signed in.
Yeah, she has identified, I think, 7 forces.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so why is that not doing its thing?
I'm trying to think in this day and age, if we pulled something like that.
Oh, my gosh. That rocked me when she said
I
that.
know,
I
I'm
thought,
blown
are you kidding
away.
me?
Because if it's loading, it's,
Usually
large,
there's a
it's
sign.
a really large.
Usually there's a sign or.
If you can't, it's also at another location.
Actually, not happy with the way it went, because that's where I want.
Usually there's some indication that it's doing
I mean, I was
something.
there, I had to be, even though it's still like 20%, full fledged discussion.
Yeah.
But,
So just out of curiosity,
Any,
What?
another
on the
one?
election, on the election one, how would the new language change yours?
And it's loading.
No.
I can tell you why.
I mean, I don't know.
Get it?
Yes, good.
Well, we still have a quorum.
Yeah, we could still go. All I know is I saw a bunch of nuns up there. when-
Did Commissioner Elfring leave, or is he
Flashbacks to my
still in the hallway?
childhood.
Where's everyone?
That's
You're always
exactly
getting
it.
that, right?
I've been whacked across the knuckles by more than one nun, that's for sure.
You know, that's how we learn.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There goes something.
Are you just trying to get the,
Okay, now when we're done with that though, oh, back to the other one then, okay. And then hopefully it won't cover up. All right. I know
that is
it.
a big month.
You could feed it from either direction.
It is.
Can you see Bill out there?
I'm just leaving that, I'm leaving that on.
You can't take it east first.
We can all stand up and applaud when he returns.
Our intent was to excuse the audience, not you.
We have to realize that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that I'm much older than you, it takes much longer.
All right. Oh, Lord. Okay. I actually look forward to that review. I think we've got to a good place to, you know, man. Although I was gonna stay loyal to.
Yeah, you got it.
I think I had to. Yeah. All right, we will resume the meeting. Actually, we're going to go into hearing mode, dealing with a plan map amendment for the city of Hermiston. Council?
Okay, what's before the board is the request from the City of Hermiston to co-adopt ordinance number 2271. This is to, in anticipation of annexing 72 acres into the city limits of Hermiston. The comprehensive plan map designation of urbanizable needs to be changed to urban. And as a result, the City Council adopted this change and then referred it to Umatilla County for co-adoption. It has been before the Umatilla County Planning Commission for review, and their recommendation is to approve the co-adoption.
Robert? Staff report?
Yeah, Bob Walter, County Planning Director. Doug summarized the purpose of this application. I'll just add, you may recall that the City of Hermiston has kind of a unique provision in their comprehensive plan that requires this co-adoption and changing property when it's brought in from the urban growth boundary into the city limits, of converting it from urbanizable to urban status. And so that's what we're considering today. One item to note is during the process we received a letter from the Oregon Fair Housing Council, and we received that prior to the Planning Commission hearing. And that's Exhibit A in your documents, and I understand you've all had a chance to review this. But basically, the planning staff followed up with Fair Housing Council after the, or we tried to follow up with Fair Housing Council after the Planning Commission's recommendation, and have not heard back from them. In their letter, they contend that the city didn't do a proper analysis of Goal 10, which we discussed at the Planning Commission hearing. That this proposal will actually increase housing availability in the city of Hermiston, which was a concern of the Fair Housing Council. So we tried to follow up, but did not hear back from them. So.
Say that objection again.
So the Fair Housing Council felt that the proposal did not address Goal 10, which is the statewide housing goal, and providing enough available land supply for future housing. However, as you'll hear from the applicant, this proposal will actually create additional developable lots that ultimately within the city. So it kind of contradicts what they were contending in their letter. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just wasn't clear on how they were objecting to it.
Right now, the property is zoned future urban 10-acre minimum parcel size. So if someone were to come to us and ask to subdivide that property, they would have to have 10-acre parcels. And what this amendment would do is change it to an R3 designation, which I believe is a multi-family housing designation. It would allow more density, therefore creating more developable lots within the city. All right, thank you.
Any other staff comment, legal comment? All right. First, we'll accept testimony in favor of this action. George Anderson.
Thank you, Commissioner Murdoch, Mr. Elton, Mr. Schaefer. I'm George Anderson, 625 West Division, Hermiston, Oregon. I represent the Hermiston School District. With me is Katie Saul, the Director of Business Services from the district, and also a co-applicant of this is the Hermiston Irrigation District, because the school district owns 19 acres and the school district owns about 52 acres, so they're a co-applicant. Mr. Ben Dixon is the attorney for the irrigation district. And the purpose of the application is for the county to co-adopt that ordinance to change it from urban to urbanizable to urban. And the thing to especially note here is that there's a companion resolution with the city that the city has passed. If this is approved, well then it gets brought into the city as R3 residential. And the planning director is totally correct here, because right now, when it's in the county, it's rural residential 10, you could put 7 residences on it. We annex this to the city, it's annexed as R3, and you can have apartments and multifamily and everything. The Fair Housing Council of Oregon and the Housing Land Advocates in Portland sent a letter to the Planning Commission. They didn't make an appearance, and they never showed at any of the city hearings. And they didn't appear in front of the Planning Commission. And we feel that they are not knowledgeable of the situation when they made their request. Also is, I introduced before the Planning Commission hearing the 2 studies that they claim were not taken into consideration, but of course they made no objection to anything that the city did, but now they're objecting at the county level. But those are into evidence. I put them into evidence. I also sent the Planning Commission a letter countering the 2 Portland councils' position, which is of record. And from my letter, these 2 groups somehow think your action will reduce the amount of available housing. It is just the opposite. It will increase the amount of available housing. My letter is in the record. I'm not going to belabor the point. In the Fair Housing Council letter, they cite, I think, 2 or 3 LUBA decisions when land that was residential was transferred over to industrial, which of course in the Bend area reduced the amount of available housing. That's not happening here. We're changing it from you could have 7 residences to apartments. And so I think somewhere along the line they didn't read what was really happening here and sent an inopportune letter. And I'm not going to read my letter to you folks because it stands on its own. The other thing, the 2 studies, the 2 Hermiston studies that I put into record really support what we're doing here. They don't counter this at all. So just briefly, I'm going to ask Director of Business Affairs, Katie Saul, just a couple of questions for the record so that you have a little better feel for this.
Would you mind joining him and identifying yourself, Katie?
I'm Katie Saul of 79300 Hurricane Lane here in Hermiston, Oregon.
And what is your position with the Hermiston Schools?
I am the Director of Business Services.
And over the last year and a half, has the school board with various committees looked into the growth of Hermiston and the need for additional schools?
Yes, we have.
What was done?
Over the last approximately 2 years, the Board of Education has appointed a Facility Masters Planning Committee. That committee was charged to look at enrollment and capacity projections, the condition of our facilities, as well as the safety and security of those facilities.
And what conclusions did it come out with, and what general plans did it have, especially in regard to an elementary school on the 19 acres that the Hermiston School District owns in this 72-acre parcel?
In June, that committee recommended to the Board of Education that we put a question on the November ballot to build a new elementary school with a prototypical elementary school similar to what we have at Sunset Elementary and West Park Elementary. And then replace Rocky Heights Elementary School with a larger capacity, again using that prototypical building, and then add an annex at Hermiston High School to address capacity there.
And the school district elementary school would be built on the east side of this 71-acre parcel, and then the 52-acre parcel owned by the Hermiston Irrigation District would be zoned multifamily. And how good a site would apartments be next to an elementary school?
It's an excellent site to have apartments or residential homes right there next to the school. Not only is it easy access for those children and families to get to school, they'll also have access to the green space and the play areas anytime they want.
And just this summer, what infrastructure is being installed on East Theater Lane that borders all of the 71 acres?
Currently, the City of Hermiston is working on sewer and water upgrades as well as paving Theater Lane. I know that that's part of the Commissioner's work as well. And then also the City is installing a new water tower just north of that property.
So in other words, it will be, ready to go, and it's not that gravel road with all the bumps as before?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Saul. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
That was gonna be my question, is this area impacted? We've made a rather major decision as a Board of Commissioners to invest in the water tower and the infrastructure, in that area, and this is part of that area. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Saul. So in conclusion, the Hermiston School District respectfully requests that the Umatilla County Board of Commissioners co-adopt City of Hermiston Ordinance 2271, changing the comprehensive plan from urbanizable to urban. This would not be part of your resolution, but I note that that would mean that City of Hermiston Ordinance 2272 will go into effect with all the property zoned R3. So that's all I have, and with this, I'll just yield to Mr. Ben Dixon, representing the Hermiston Irrigation District.
Good morning. Cameron Ben Dixon, 245 East Main Street in Hermiston. I represent the Hermiston Irrigation District. Attorney David Hadley worked with Mr. Anderson at the beginning and passed the baton to me. We just joined in what the school district has proposed here. The property is really well situated for a subdivision. There's already been a lot of interest for the Hermiston Irrigation District to go forward with a sale to a developer, but we're waiting until infrastructure has been set and the zoning is done before we entertain those offers. So we just ask that the commission co-adopt as proposed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of this matter? Anyone wish to speak in opposition to this matter? Anybody in the audience wish to make a general comment? Have I covered everything, council? All right, I'll close the hearing and we'll go into deliberation.
Mr. Chair, I think this proposal and this plan amendment is part and parcel of the growth of Hermiston and the making available of additional lots for the housing needs that are certainly necessary for the community to grow. The community is short of housing currently. The vacancy rate in homes is less than 2%. There just is no housing available. There needs to be more, and I would move that we approve the plan map amendment for the city of Hermiston.
While you were speaking, I was actually reading your letter, and very well written. Thank you for not reading it aloud. but I second that motion. So, and I agree with everything that my colleague said.
Well, I think it'd be incongruous for us not to support it, since we're a significant part of making that area grow. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. We will depart in safety, collect some attorney's fees.
Make available chairs for the throng outside that want to come in.
Possibly Mr. Good would like to represent this sanitary disposal. No, thank you.
All right. Item number 3, solid waste franchisee rate increase. Mrs. Miller is here on behalf of solid waste.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Gina Miller. I'm the coordinator for the code enforcement program. Today I'm here in the capacity of the staff liaison from the Solid Waste Committee. We are here today to bring this matter before you for final consideration. Sanitary Disposal, our franchise holder for the Hermiston, Stanfield, and City of Umatilla unincorporated areas, have submitted proposals for a rate increase. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee met on July 2nd and reviewed the proposed rate increase application. Following a thorough review, the committee voted unanimously to approve the application and refer it up to the Board of Commissioners for final approval. Per Chapter 50.070 of the Umatilla County Code of Ordinances, a public notice was published in the East Oregonian advertising the proposed rate increase to the affected areas. Additionally, the public notice was posted in 3 prominent locations also in the affected areas. The public notice advised people that they had until July 19th 2019 at 5 p.m. to submit written comments or remonstrances. No written comments or remonstrances were filed with the county. So this is the final step of this process, and the matter is before you today for final consideration. With me today is Mike Jewett, the owner of Sanitary Disposal, and as well the newly appointed chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Mike McHenry. So I'd like to invite them to be available for any questions that you might have. Or for me or for them, good.
Would you like to speak?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Mike Jewett. I am the manager of Sanitary Disposal. Like Dina said, we have approximately 3,200 customers in the West County, collection customers. Our last increase was July 2016. And each year, our CPA performs a rate study on how we did. At the end of 2017, after our full year of the rate study, we were able to add $43,000 to our reserve. This is an ongoing reserve that we keep adding to, subtracting from since mid-1990s. Last year, unfortunately, due to the lack of income off of recyclables, we had a shortfall of approximately $296,000, and that is continuing. The recycling markets are not getting better per se. We've lost about 2/3 of our income because of the lack of mills that are taking the recycling, China mill. And what's happened is when China cut back, all the material goes to the domestic mills, so therefore the domestic mills pay little because they have less to choose from. If approved, what this increase would do would raise the majority of our customers up to $20.10 a month. It would raise them an additional $1.70 per month. What we've done is we've taken our rate study and we have applied what we feel is an inflationary cost for 2019, 2020, 2021, and after we applied those inflationary costs, it came to expense ratio of increase of 1% a year. Besides that, we've added on our shortfall that we need to make up by the end of 2021. Otherwise, we are continued shortfall. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mike, just one question. This pertains to the area outside of any city.
That is correct.
In Umatilla County. How does it compare to in-city rates?
Very similar. There's not a lot of difference in our rates between the city and the county, but the county is more just because of the amount of travel that we have to do to pick up each customer. In town, we can pick up approximately 800 residential customers a day. In the county, we're cut down to about 400. So the rates are a little bit higher in the county than in the city.
So if your rates increased by 9.3% in the cities as well?
We've already, you're correct. We've already had a rate increase granted in Morrow County. City of Uruguay takes effect January 1, and Boardman took effect July 1. And we are approaching the other cities as we go.
When would this rate increase take place?
September 1st.
Broad question. We've made a lot of headway in the last decade or so relative to the recycling movement. Has not much to do with this question, but since you're here, do you think we're going to experience a decline of interest in recycling?
Okay, what's happened to us is we have materials that we no longer recycle, such as the plastic container. There's no market at this point in time for the majority of the plastic containers except for milk jugs. We still provide that service at the transfer station for recycling. Of course, newspaper is going away because of the online internet.
Carefully sitting right behind you.
There's just not as many out there, I'm sorry. But the cardboard, we're still taking the cardboard. It's costing us money. We got to make it up, but we don't want to lose that recycling customer. We want to make it continue and let it continue so we are still recycling as much as we always have.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, with I see the Solid Advisory Committee has said yes to this, so I make a motion we adopt Board Order BCC 2019-058.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 4, Union Street.
Do you want me to talk about this, Doug, or do you want to do it? Okay. I was approached by the city of Umatilla that they would like to take Union Street, which goes between Lind Road and Highway 395. And in the letter, they requested that they just take full ownership of the road, and at no cost to the county. They just like permission for the city to own it. That way they can make upgrades for the I want to say the Bonnie property, but I think it's something different now. Is it, what do you call it? What's the official name? Vedata, okay. For the Vedata site, and so that's kind of what they're going with there. And I've got a map of it. Well, of course, it's a little bit down. I think from there, slide down. Yeah, there's Union Street right there in green. And they already own, excuse me, they already own Lind Road, that section in yellow. The city already owns that section of Lind Road. And this would just tie into that. And going off to the left from where that red T is, if you look directly to the left, that's where the Vedata site is now. And it just makes a natural progression for traffic to go into that area. And it's safer to come off of 395 for the big trucks and everything, so.
What would be the legal status of that road? Would it become even though it's not annexed, would it become a city street?
It is a public road, and it will remain a public road even if it's annexed. The city will have to accept it into their jurisdiction as a city street.
And so, until it's annexed, can they accept it into their? I guess I'm asking a legal question. I should ask them.
Right. It's my understanding that city services, they are allowed more to expand than they have in the past. And so they have water services now outside city limits, so they can have, we definitely have county roads within the city, so they can have city streets outside.
I guess that's proper.
And they would be responsible for maintaining that street.
Yeah,
as a commissioner, I've certainly been all in favor of giving city streets to cities and letting them take responsibility for them. This is kind of the reverse, and first time we've had this kind of an opportunity to give away a street that isn't in the city yet, but they're willing to accept responsibility for.
Right, and it's not a county road, though. It is not county maintained.
Yes.
So.
But having followed Lynn Street from the Vedata site all the way down to Highway 730, I think anything we can do to accommodate the expansion and improvement of Union Street to serve that area is a service to Vedata and Umatilla, but it's also a service to those people who live between Union Street and Highway 730 on Lind Road. So.
I'd also like to point out for the record that this is in their urban growth boundary. It is within their boundaries, so.
So it appears we're adamantly agreeing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Purchase of vehicle, Sheriff's Office. I don't see any uniforms, except Gina.
The Sheriff's Office is requesting to seek purchasing 2 new vehicles, one for the Civil Division and one for the administration. There's 2 different mechanisms the county has available now for purchase of vehicles. One is through the historical process of going out for bids, and also through the new enterprise management plan. The Sheriff's Office really wants to seek both options to see what price they can get for vehicles. So the request before the board is basically to authorize the purchase of 2 new SUV vehicles for the Sheriff's Office.
Now, doesn't it also give them the opportunity, I mean, they still also have this state's program of vehicle acquisition available to them, so they still have a third option. It's always been my position that we give local businesses an opportunity to bid where it's possible.
And that's exactly why the undersheriff wanted this on the agenda. He wanted the local companies to be able to have a shot at making a bid on it. So.
I understand. And Mr. Chair, I would move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. Reclassification of position.
Skip one.
Oh, no, I did?
Another vehicle.
Oh, vehicle purchase youth services. Sorry, Mr. Primer.
Oh, now I know why you skipped it.
I was expediting the meeting.
Good morning, Commissioners, Joe Primer, Director of Community Justice. I'm here on behalf of Digna today. This particular request, I think, began and predated the conversation we had with the enterprise.
It did.
So we built into our budget request and were approved for the purchase of an additional vehicle this year. Bids went through the Vehicle Replacement Committee for small to mid-sized type of sedan. Ultimately, the lowest bid, Chevrolet for 2019 Chevrolet Cruze. So we bid before you before, seeking permission to solicit the bids, and now we're at the point of moving forward.
Mr. Chair, I move that we proceed with this action.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. All right, reclassification of position. Do you want me to speak to that? Okay. In the matter of the reclassification of position, we recommended that the assessment supervisor position in the Department of Assessment and Taxation be reclassified to range 33, and that this individual, now serving in that position, Rachel Reynolds, becomes Deputy Director of Assessment and Taxation. And
So moved.
Oh, I was going to make the motion.
Oh, sorry.
You
I
can
think I
second it.
withdraw.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I invited Rachel today, and warned her that we may wish to have her say something. So, Rachel?
Thank you very much for your vote of confidence in me, and I will represent Umatilla County to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
I'd be happy to. I'm excited about this opportunity for Rachel, certainly, with some future plans in my region and realm. There's certainly a need and desire to see a successful transition when that point in time comes to play. And I'm extremely excited about the opportunity for Rachel. I think she's going to fill those shoes at some future point, possibly with your decision and discretion. But that's to be seen. So anyhow, thank you for that opportunity.
Well, during Rachel's 7 years, she has moved up and served us well, so we're happy you're willing to accept the position, Rachel. All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yes.
All right, item 8, employee FTE increase, public health. Joe?
Good morning, Joe Kumara, Director for Eco Health.
Are you afraid of us? Come on up.
See if you can hear me. I'm here today because we want to increase one of our nursing supervisor positions from currently at a 0.8 to 1.0. We are in the process of implementing a new project to conduct a needs assessment for children with special health care needs in the area, which is an area that it's been identified that there are gaps in services that are being provided, and we do get referrals from people wanting those services provided. Currently, we have funding for 2 months of that increase provided from Ocean Oregon Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Needs, and we are in process of submitting application to the EOCCO for a new project with letters of support from both Ocean and Gopi, with all indications that this application will be looked upon favorably to further that funding for a year beyond that. At this point, we need to begin this work now with the funding that we have received, and so we're asking for this position to be increased contingent upon that funding continuing and being received.
Chair, I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, creation of position, community corrections.
Morning, Commissioners. Dale Primmer, Director of Community Justice again. I think I've had individual conversations with most, if not all of you, related to this. The concept for this position dates back a year or two as our management team within our office has done some goal setting and planning around the operations of community corrections, which is the adult division of community justice. So as you know, our primary purpose is to deliver field services and supervision for the felony, parole, and probation population of the community. In addition to that, we provide a host of ancillary services, community service, electronic surveillance. We manage what we call the 1145 process in jail that moves inmates around within custody into treatment settings and alternative forms of custody and those sorts of things. We have taken on justice reinvestment grants to deliver day management, jail programming, and treatment court. The result of which has created a full host of ancillary services that have been kind of watered down and spread out through the management team, and the goal behind this is to consolidate those efforts under the supervision of one supervisor. So we've been sitting on this for a while. We've been looking at budget numbers coming in from the state. Once we've got those numbers, we have taken those things and digested those numbers, compared them to the revenues that we currently have on hand, and we are comfortable with making the recommendation to move forward on that position. Our intent is to promote from within for that position, which will then vacate a position that will go out for open bid.
You currently have a position available for that, not a person, but you have approval for that to hire an additional person, and that person, that's the intent, is that the person that you have approval to hire already would backfill into this position.
So we do have a couple positions that are currently open that we are electing to not fill for a variety of reasons, so that creates significant revenue savings in the reduction of 2 FTE. So that will more than compensate for the cost of this position. Of course, assuming that one of our internal folks promote, then that vacates their position that we'll fill. So that will be an existing position that we'll fill.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Creation of position, CDDP.
Good morning. Kim Weinberg, Program Manager for Community Development with Disabilities Program. Good morning. I'm here to request a permission to create a position, another eligibility position. We currently have one. Our program is, we are responsible for all of the eligibility determination for all intellectual and developmental disability related services, whether they stay with us or go to the brokerage. And right now, having one at in such a crucial position puts us at a disadvantage when that one person is not available. It slows us down, as well as it just doesn't allow us as much flexibility as we currently need.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
I might point out, in this case, as in the previous case, our CFO, who is not with us today, has indicated that there's no issues funding these, so with that.
They wouldn't be on the agenda otherwise.
What?
They wouldn't be on the agenda otherwise.
Yes. I just want the record to show in Robert's absence that he has approved it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
All right, item 11, which is, do we have this in resolution form?
I do not know.
Okay, so, I am proposing that the commissioners file a formal complaint with the Union Pacific Railroad regarding extended blocking of an intersection in Stanfield. The city of Stanfield has spent the last, I don't know how many years, according to their previous city manager, trying to get some kind of relief from this. I've gotten complaints from farmers and ranchers who have been stuck at the crossing for an hour or more with livestock and perishable produce. Farmers have complained about the fact that it's an economic hardship for their workers and trucks to be there. I know that recently an attempt to get a road grader back to the county shop, they finally just gave up and left it on the other side of the tracks. I've gotten complaints from residents who live in the area about extended blockage of the tracks. I've talked to the undersheriff about the matter. He has also indicated frustration and in essence encouraged the board to actually file a formal complaint both to UP in Portland and Omaha relative to this problem.
So has there been a list, any documentation, a list of how many times and how long, or any of that kind of stuff kept?
I don't think so. I'm just responding to the number, the comments from the city of Stanfield and the comments from various individuals in and around Stanfield who, sufficient number that I feel it's a matter that needs to be moved forward.
Certainly, and
it isn't an isolated one time they forgot and left a train there too long.
Yeah.
It's
I'm just suggesting
continuing.
perhaps it might be helpful to, if there had been a list kept, to be able to have specific instances, to be able to point out the railroad, look, here's what's happened and how often it's happened, and it is a problem. I'm wondering if the city of Stanfield has had any communication with the railroad.
Yes, according to them, they have.
And there will be a record of some of these complaints in the sheriff's office record-keeping system.
Dispatch.
Yeah,
Right.
and I can speak from personal experience that this is an ongoing issue that spans for quite a long time.
And living alongside the railroad and close to one of those crossings that they do make, it is certainly an annoyance.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to be allowed 15 minutes to be stopped at the crossing, yet they're exceeding that, you know.
Well, I think part of the problem is that because of the proximity to Hinkle, the Hinkle rail yard, they're assembling trains and so forth, and it's
No longer.
causing, they're assembling trains and it's causing a problem.
They're assembling trains, I think, on the main line
Yes.
currently, instead of using the hump yard, which they used to use. So,
Right.
Mr. Chair, I would concur and move approval of sending a letter of complaint to Union Pacific.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, other business.
Well, certainly we have a county fair going on, and welcome all of you as the fair liaison. I
Thank
welcome
you.
both of you to the county fair this year, even though you chose the wrong shirt.
I do believe we're in the correct colors.
Yeah. So would you bet the minutes show that the memo of today said black from the fair board?
And the fair board liaison chose to ignore it in view of the temperature of the day.
Yeah.
But
He doesn't need your help.
we're looking forward to the being host to the Walla Walla County Commissioners at the fair today. They'll be coming at approximately 4 o'clock, enjoying the fair somewhat, enjoying the hospitality and the food at the VIP tent, and the show afterwards. So, having been on the fairgrounds, I can tell you that 100-degree plus temperature in the afternoons does affect the amount of people that do come out. I spoke to a couple of the vendors who said they were talking to people who said, gee, they don't go to the fair anymore because it's too far to go. They can't walk there anymore. And to which I suggested that maybe the gate is not greatly affected by the number of people who can't walk there anymore.
Well, I believe there's a free shuttle service.
There's a free shuttle service from the community building to the fairgrounds. And plus, anybody who drives in, there's also the People Mover that has been acquired this year from the Benton County Fair. And so they're picking people up in the parking area and bringing them even to the front gate. So it's being made very convenient. And it has the look of a state fair. It looks very good. And it's off and operating. No glitches that I'm aware of to begin with, other than just little minor things that are dealt with and will always be there and come up. So things are working well. The sheriff has a safety plan, very well detailed, and so they're set. It's working.
He took my allotted time, so I'm
Well,
good.
I'll forego my comments because...
All morning long, I took your allotted time.
My grandchildren are showing as we speak, so I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.